Acting Speaker, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today and my electorate, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay tribute to their elders past and present. I wish to extend my congratulations to the member for Albany on his election to the position of Speaker, and to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and extend congratulations to members on both sides of the House on their election to this 40th Parliament. I thank the people of the electorate of Kalamunda for supporting Western Australia Labor's promise of a fresh approach in the state election and in electing me as their member of the Legislative Assembly. It's an honour and privilege to be standing in this place. I will do my utmost to ensure that I live up to the trust placed in me as the people's representative and reiterate my pledge to work hard for all the people of the electorate. I succeed the Honourable John Day MLA, who held Darling Range as it was when he first came into this place from 1993 to 2008, and then the seat of Kalamunda from 2008 to 2017. This is a significant period of continuous parliamentary service, and in my capacity as his successor, it's fitting to acknowledge his significant contribution in public life, both as a member of the Legislative Assembly and as a minister across a range of portfolios, and I wish him well in his future endeavours. Deputy Speaker, as you will be aware, the electorate of Kalamunda, through its various iterations from 1974 to 1989 and from its re-establishment in 2008, has never returned a Labour MLA until 2017, that is. And I'm deeply appreciative of the commitment and work of the grassroots members of the Zigzag branch, who are here, some of them this evening, members of the Labour Party, who over decades have remained steadfast and determined to represent Labour's values in a community, providing the base on which my campaign team was able to establish the 2017 campaign. It's the hard work of the branch members in combination with the efforts of many other supporters and volunteers in a crazily concentrated 3-month period that has resulted in me delivering my inaugural speech this evening. The West Australian Labor victory in seats such as Kalamunda cannot be simply attributed to "it was time." It was not simply that the Liberal National Government had held office since 2008, nor that it was tired and in disarray. And from its performance in opposition, disarray seems to have followed it to the opposition benches. Its approach to the people became increasingly arrogant and distant. Post the 2013 election, its record was a litany of broken promises. I know that many traditional Liberal voters made decisions at the 2017 general election to support Western Australian Labor in Kalamunda because they told me so at every opportunity during the campaign. They were tired of being taken for granted, tired of the lack of action to tackle a range of issues in the electorate, and tired of what they saw as the government's gross mismanagement of the state's finances. The previous government and the local member were seen to have become increasingly cavalier and disconnected from the needs and concerns of the community. Our contract on the government benches is to honestly seek to fulfil the promises made before and during the election campaign. The government values its trust with the people and will not squander it. And my personal contract is with the 29,906 electors and their families to be their strong voice in this Parliament with the new government, advocating for the resolution of issues brought to my attention as the Western Australian Labor candidate and now as the member of this 40th Parliament, contributing to the good governance of this state as a whole. And the local issues left untouched were many. There are too many for me to, in fact, offer in detail this evening. But they include the complete lack of available high-needs aged care, the need to ensure that our fellow citizens who benefit from NDIS are not disadvantaged by WANDIS in this agreement. Asbestos-contaminated sites litter the electorate, and there are concerns from parents who have a requirement for the rigorous management of asbestos in our older school buildings. Community safety, police response times and crime prevention, clarity on the continuing services to be provided by the Kalamunda Hospital and plans for its future, a complete response to the recommendations of the Ferguson report, and the need for a comprehensive hills and rural fire strategy. The poor state of the fabric of many of our public schools, the metropolitan regional scheme processes used for determining scheme amendments, including the role of local government, environmental conservation, urbanisation, and the proposed, believe it, in its title, Green Growth Plan, the need for improved public transport service routes across the hills and foothills, and not least the concerns for the water quality, greenhouse gas emissions and human health posed by the licensing of unconventional extraction of gas, albeit exploration by fracking, should it be allowed to proceed. There is much to keep me busy for the next 4 years. The electorate includes parts of the city of Gosnells, the Shire of Kalamunda and Mundaring. In the changes brought by the Electoral Commission in 2015, the electorate lost parts of Maddington and Forestfield to the west and southwest, and gained Hovia, Parkerville, Mahogany Creek, Glen Forest, Stoneville and part of Mundaring. I've lived in the electorate in Darlington for the last 15 years. I love the place, its tranquility, its history and the particular village residential style that it affords. Darlington shares much in common with the communities across the electorate, but each has its distinct character and flavour that the communities wish to enhance and are determined to preserve. I came to Australia in 1979 to Fremantle following the members of my immediate family some 8 years after they had migrated to Australia. I was born in 1950 in a relatively poor family in socio-economic terms in post-war Britain in the industrial part of Lancashire. We lived on a council housing estate. For most of my childhood and into my teenage years, our family of 3 girls and 4 boys depended on our mother as a sole parent. The 2 eldest boys, my half-brothers, left school early at the ages of 14 and 15, respectively. Stanley was apprenticed in an iron foundry, and John started work on the railways. Both, in their youth, helped to keep food on the table and a reasonable roof over our heads. While my father, who my mother partnered after her first husband's death, was not an entirely absent figure during my childhood and adolescence, he did not live with us and continued to contribute little to our upbringing. The little money that came in each week was expended in that week, and there was no room for savings. I have a distinct recollection as a 5-year-old or 6-year-old of hiding under the stairs with my mother and younger sisters and brother, having to be very quiet as the rent man knocked and needed to be avoided. But we coped, and were no different from many families who struggled to manage at that time. It's in this context that schools that I attended and my teachers were strong and important influences in my life that enabled me to marshal my modest abilities and to contemplate a tertiary education. It was the culture of Edgerton Park Secondary Modern School, which largely served the council housing estate on which I lived, and the vision, encouragement and promptings of Norman Williams, the headmaster, in the period from 1961 to 1966 that opened up the possibilities for me to proceed into the sixth form at the nearby selective Audenshaw Grammar School, where I completed my A-levels, whereas joining the workforce at the end of the compulsory years of schooling was the general rule for my peers. Mr. Williams introduced O-level courses into Edgerton Park because he recognised in his non-selective secondary school there were many capable students who were missed by the selection process at the age of 11 years. As a result, he provided the option, encouragement and support for his pupils to contemplate tertiary education. Without his vision for his school, my life story would have been quite different. He recognised our disadvantage, and he used his energy to enable his pupils to see a range of possibilities for their futures and gave us the means to realise them. It was his passion and commitment to improving the lot of his pupils that helped shape my view of the world. He gave me options, denied to my older brothers and sisters, and I knew I wanted to be a teacher like him. And I know that as principal, he's been my role model. I began teaching in 1974 at Fernley High School, Melton Mowbray, and then moved to King Edward VII Upper School in the same town the next year. Both were part of the Leicestershire plan that had brought in a system of non-selective comprehensive schools. My first school in Western Australia was the Foothills School, Guildford, which in the 1980s had an enrolment of 120 students in years 8 to 12, but sadly no longer exists. It was established by Hugh Thompson, the founding coordinator, at the behest of a group of families in the hills and foothills that found their children not readily catered for by the local schools. Some were very bright, but oddly eccentric. Some had degrees of intellectual and physical disability, and some were simply badly behaved. One student, I learned in my first week, had been expelled from their previous school because they had set fire to a classroom. I started as a teacher of English, but over the years expanded my talents to teaching woodwork, cooking, running PE classes, driving the school bus, and eventually running the Outdoor Pursuits Wilderness Survival Camp for Year 10s. And by the end of 1979, there had been a steady turnover of staff, including the acting coordinator. And I was approached by the chair of school council to see if I would take on this stupendous role. I agreed on one condition, that I be allowed to stay in the position, warts and all, for 2 years. I ended up staying nearly 11 years, leading a team of 10 multitasking, very capable teachers. The few disagreements among the students were resolved by peer mediation and the use of what we called the house meeting, similar to this, where serious matters could be resolved. The calling of a house meeting took precedence over all other activity, and remarkably, they were called infrequently. The result was that in the school, students developed a close connection with one another, developing both self-reliance and acceptance of self and difference in others, and the ability to engage with their studies sufficiently to succeed when previously they had not. These connections have endured for many, and I attend the annual gathering where we swap stories. Now, a very old man and older men and women, many of them who are now in their 50s. My life was enriched by the experience, and I developed skills of personnel management and leadership that I was able to translate into a larger and quite different context of John Septimus Roe Anglican Community School, where I must have got something right because I remained employed there for 21 years. In a nutshell, I learned that leadership, to be successful, must permeate through a school with a vision and set the values and share them with the staff, the students and parents, and that every member of the community, in fact, is a leader, and that we do not abrogate individual responsibility of actions simply by following others. The education of a child is the shared responsibility of all adults who come into contact with the child. The curriculum, in that respect, is the sum total of the child's experiences. Above all, education is about social engagement and understanding that in you, I see me, and understanding that I am me because of you. And you exist. And that without the other, there is no self. As Bishop Tutu puts it, we do not come fully formed into this world. We learn how to think, how to walk, how to speak, how to behave. Indeed, how to be human beings in order to be human. We are made for togetherness, to exist in a tender network of interdependence. There's an African concept for this capturing of the sense of interrelated togetherness of individuals in community. Ubuntu. I am because you are. These ideas have steered me as a principal and have formed all the decisions that I've taken with my students, parents and teachers and support staff and the development of John Septimus Roe, with pastoral care at its centre and the wild celebration of diversity in our common humanity. I became politically aware as a 14-year-old. It was the 1964 UK election and Harold Wilson's emphasis on increasing opportunity within society, particularly through change and expansion with the education system, crystallised for me the evident role that governments could and should and must have in driving social change. It was then that Labour values and the Labour Party resonated with me. It was, for want of no better description, my light on my hill. I saw, as a 14-year-old, that it had been the expansion of the welfare state under the immediate post-war Labour governments that had radically altered the prospects of the poor, including mine. I came to the view that the Labour Party was the party of progressive politics dedicated to the common good, alleviating disadvantage arising from inequality of opportunity. 53 years later on, I've had no reason to change that view. The expanded welfare state in the immediate post-war years and beyond gave me, among other social and economic benefits, access to free tertiary education and a student grant to meet my living expenses. In 1968, this support enabled me to embark on an education degree through the University of Leicester, despite my mother's lack of means. Between 1964 and 1970, Labour enacted a number of major social changes, including the liberalisation of laws on censorship, divorce, homosexuality, immigration and abortion, and the abolition of capital punishment. What was true of my experience in the UK had been true of my experience in Australia. It's the Labour movement, the trade unions and the Labour Party that provide the engine room and agency for progressive change for the betterment of the common good. Labour's the architect of Medicare, the superannuation guarantee scheme, the Gonski funding reforms of our schools, and most recently, National Disability Insurance Scheme. May I have an extension?
Extension granted.
These are major Labour initiatives that have improved the quality of life, improved people's security in retirement, have expanded access and opportunity in our community. By contrast, the Conservative side of politics resists such measures. It's the Labour movement and the Labour Party that seeks to protect conditions of employment and wages, while the other side seeks to weaken them. Labour is the party of compassion and a fair go for all, believing that all people are created equal in their entitlement to dignity and respect and should have an equal chance to reach their potential. Words such as lifters and leaners, language that seeks to separate and denigrate, are not part of the Labour lexicon. The Western Australian government has a crucial role in bringing about fairness. Social justice is at the core of Labour's values. It's our party's DNA. We believe we should work together as a community to use the instruments of government to channel the resources of the state, to help alleviate suffering and hardship, and to address exclusion and disadvantage. We do not need to be dragged to that view. My modest roots are an important part of what makes me who I am, and I do not forget those whose circumstances are less fortunate than mine are now. What I appreciate is that my schooling and the influences of a caring and dedicated group of teachers, coupled with the direct intervention of government in the form of the welfare state, enabled me to have a broader set of choices in what I could do with my life than were available to my older brothers and older sister and my mother. That is what I aspire to provide for all those who, through the accident of birth, find themselves materially impoverished, marginalised and excluded. Mr. Speaker, we know that despite our affluence in this place, an opportunity to afforded to us and for the majority of people in our state, there are far too many of our children born into intergenerational disadvantage. We know the gap between advantage and disadvantage is widening. For many of our children, sadly, theirs is not a lucky country. Our responsibility as decision makers in this place is always to remember them and to want to make a difference for them. What did I stand for in this election? Well, why? I want a better future for all our families than was promised by the previous government. I want a state government that is responsive to the needs of all Western Australians. Christine and I have 6 adult children. Some of them are here this evening, and 8 grandchildren. They are young people with young families. We're acutely aware of the pressures placed on families and the cuts to and underfunding of essential services by the previous Liberal national government. The McGowan Western Australian Labor government has a solid plan promising a solid future for the future of our people of our state. It's a plan that focuses on West Australia being a modern, inclusive society where each Western Australian is treated equally and afforded the same access to services and opportunities in health, where patients are put before profit, and in education, where our teachers and education assistants are valued. Above all, Western Australia deserves Western Australia's Labor's plans for jobs, for reducing unemployment, and for dealing with the economic challenges now facing the state. Labor is already realising its plan to diversify the economy with its sharp focus on local jobs for local people, where local manufacturing will be driven through the stimulus of a fully funded Metronet and the establishment of Defence West, and where tourism will be promoted through Brand WA, and where we look to growing our export share in Asia. This is a promising, bright future, members of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, I believe good schools are the key to bringing about social change. For disadvantaged children, their schools and their teachers provide what may well be the only stabilising influence in their lives. Good schools are well-resourced schools. The relocation of the state's academic selective school to the CBD is an exciting project. I would hope, though, that in years to come, we can look to ways of creating a means by which students attending the school come from a slightly broader range of socio-economic backgrounds than is currently the case. It's a northern suburbs, it's a leafy suburbs place of indulgence at the moment. And I want kids from Lockridge to go there, kids from Balga, kids from Midland, kids who come from council housing estates, not those who in fact can be driven there in Daimlers and the like. Mr. Speaker, schools generally, and with them the schools in my electorate, were sadly neglected by the previous government, which cut a total of $203 million from primary and high school budgets, cut 1,455 jobs, and I want to remind you of that, from education, including essential education assistance in schools. Promises made in the 2013 election campaign by the Liberal national parties, we just promised that it's part and parcel of electioneering, I think I heard someone say, to improve or replace school buildings were broken, and promises were daringly repeated in the 2017 election campaign, using the sale of Western power to fund the promises. In contrast, Western Australian Labor will invest in education and provide more one-on-one attention for children. WA Labor will do this by putting 300 education assistants, 500 Aboriginal Island education officers, and an additional 120 teachers back into WA schools where they should be. The sterling work of our teachers in the Special Education Centre in Kalamunda, and I know you've seen it, the Honourable Member for Cottesloe, that enrolled students from across Kalamunda and adjoining electorates is impeded by less than adequate facilities. Co-located at Kalamunda Senior High School, our teachers of students with special needs and their support staff are limited by inadequate accommodation spread over 3 levels of school, and with teacher preparation areas establishing corridor spaces. This is simply not good enough. Lesmurdie Primary School and Wollaston Primary School are 2 schools in a similar need of care and attention. My electorate knows that funds are tight, and not everything can be done in a single term of government. But as we invest in the operational costs of schooling through the needs-based funding model given to us by Gonski, equally, each of our children and their teachers deserve up-to-date and well-maintained facilities. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the McGowan Labor government will do all it can in the current circumstances to support our schools in their essential work in community building and opening up opportunities for all children, but especially those with disabilities. I think I've got 6 minutes. Keep going. I'm out of my space. I'll lose my experience, won't I? Here we go. People want to be able to continue to live and be supported in retirement and old age in the communities where they have made their homes and where they can be supported by their families. The provision of additional appropriately located aged care facilities in the electorate has been an unmet need for the last 30 years. Specifically, there's a growing requirement for high needs care. The resolution of this issue is the top priority for me, and I pledge the aged in the electorate that I will prosecute this vigorously. Importantly, there needs to be a coordinated, planned approach to the adequate provision of aged care across the Eastern Metropolitan Region as a whole, involving the 3 levels of government, in a collaborative process to facilitate the provision of the age. So, start that again. In order to provide a 3 levels of government approach in a collaborative process to facilitate commercial and not-for-profit providers to address the changing needs of an ageing population and to deliver these much-needed services to the community. My predecessor was responsible as the Minister for Planning for the Green Growth Plan. I want to say this about the Green Growth Plan. While appearing attractive, I suggest it needs much more work, as it appears there will be a net loss of 90,000 hectares of land earmarked for conservation in the System 6 report and the Bush Forever plan handed over to development. Estimates would indicate that the Green Growth Plan, as it stands, proposes to protect a mere 3% of the original wetland system, 80% of which has been lost since European settlement. I wish to end, though, as I began, by extending my sincere thanks to the host of volunteers and families who assisted in the campaign. Ours was a very short 3-month campaign from Saturday the 3rd of December 2016 to the 11th of March 2017. I wish to thank particularly the Honourable Dave Kelly, my astute campaign director, Zita Powell, my determined campaign manager, and Alan McCullum, our long-suffering field organiser, for their consummate hard work and combined efforts in the face of other competing demands on their time. On the ground, we were enthusiastically supported by the Zigzag branch members. I wish to mention in particular Howard Watts, Chris Brown, John Walker, Marcia Maher, Jess Canold and James Martin, who provided the core of our relatively small but effective campaign. I'm also very indebted for the extraordinary support provided by Patrick Gorman and the Central Campaign team, by the broad membership of the trade union movement, but particularly Carolyn Smith and United Voice for their practical contributions to the campaign for Kalamunda and their great moral support. I would especially thank our children Jacob, Amy, Liam, Esther, Carla and Niall, and his wife Natalie, and their friends Annika and Luke Lowry, my sister Susan and brother-in-law Keith Mann, and my niece Lisa, and nephews James and David for their strong support. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to my friends and former colleagues, Dr. Ken Evans and David Hill, who willingly supported me. I am especially grateful for the support and encouragement of my wife, Christine, and her wise counsel throughout the campaign, and who, despite undergoing major surgery in the weeks before the 11th of March, was out before and on election day setting up the coordinated support for booth workers. I am constantly amazed by her tenacity, her resilience and capacity for downright hard work. Together, my family and Team Kalamunda did the impossible, and here I am. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, the new Labour government has much to do to restore faith in the government of the state. It's made an excellent purposeful start on the under the strong leadership of Mark McGowan, and I am humbled to have been given the opportunity to contribute to the good governance of our state. I relish the opportunity to continue actively to engage and work closely with the communities in my electorate that have long felt neglected and have their needs underrepresented. The people of the electorate of Kalamunda have deserved a new approach, have been promised a fresh approach, and they can rest assured they will get one.
You owned it.
Is it all right?